Welcome back to the Georgia Show. You know, Bill, I was talking on my show, The Skiff, this week, and I just realized the first show was on April 10th, 2022, and we had Herschel Walker and Rich Barris, and we've been at this for a long time. You came in shortly after that, but we're finally getting to the truth in Georgia. What say you?
We're getting to some of the truth in Georgia. I have a funny feeling that, just like Washington, D.C., the swamp in Georgia is deeper than many would imagine. And I think we continue to slog through it.
Yes, and today we're going to bring you, in China they have a saying. It's like capitalism with CCP characteristics. We're going to talk about Ponzi schemes with Georgia characteristics, or should I say Ponzi schemes Georgia style today, on what went down with First Liberty. We're going to get into that significantly. We're also having a treat for you because a lot of this has to do with the failure of the church to stand for what is right in Georgia and across the country. And as you know, we have papers all around the country, and our Connecticut team has found a rock star in Connecticut, Pastor Jake Dell of the Congregational Church of Woodbury, Connecticut, who is bringing fire against preachers who are not doing what is right in the great state of Connecticut. And I think it has a lot to do with what's going on in Georgia. You know, Bill, we have a lot of people in Georgia using God as a reference for other agendas. And this is a subject you've been all over. And I think Pastor Jake will talk about that. What are we going to talk about in Georgia specifically?
Well, so we're going to talk about, as you said, the latest data that's come out surrounding First Liberty, the company that was seized at the end of June for what now they're reporting to be a Ponzi scheme that goes back several years. We're going to talk about people who have been caught up in that. We're going to talk about some of the victims. And now it begins to be apparent that some of the money that apparently they've been raising through First Liberty and has been accumulating with the Frost family has been, in fact, transferred via contributions to certain political candidates in campaigns. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I believe that that's going to get much deeper. And there's already speculation about, was this in some cases a two-way street? And we don't know, but we're gonna take a look at that, and we will be joined about 20 after by Brian K. Pritchard, BKP, for those who know him that way. And we're going to talk about a number of the things now merging as we get deeper into this case. It's a sad story for especially surrounding the victims, or alleged victims, I guess we'll still call them. But the folks that have money at risk, we feel terrible about. And, we need to delve into this deeply so that people understand it. And if there are any other things like this floating around, hopefully they'll be guarded as they look at them. So,
well, I just want to say that we have been, our goal and our focus and our determination here is to just bring the truth. We were attacked pretty heavily in the last couple of years for not being real Republicans, for working for Kamala Harris, for not promoting unity, for not reporting on what the establishment wanted us to report. But you're distracting everybody over here on this meaningless stuff about the Georgia GOP Inc. and corruption in Fulton County and all that. Well, we're staying true to our focus, and I think we're proud of that. And what I want to say is we need your help. If you haven't supported us with our no ad subscriptions yet, please do it. We need support. You need to go to the top right corner of the Georgia Record where it says subscribe with no ads, fill it in, and it's $10 a month or $100 a year. Pay the $100. You're done with it for a year. You get access to the entire CDM network with no advertisements. So that is spectacular, and people love it. We get a lot of good feedback, but we need to grow that revenue source so we can count on what we want to do in reporting and getting all the information in and hire reporters and pay for investigations and all of that. So please support us in that way. So back to you, Bill. How should we proceed? Should we jump into Pastor Dell, or do you have something else you want to get into?
Let's go ahead and let's hear from Pastor Dell. I think that's a very good place to start. To your point, when we talk about truth and real beliefs, by sticking with the truth, it may not always be popular, but we're at the point where we're about ready to order the hats that say, CDM and the Georgia Record were right about everything.
Well, yes, and there's more to come. And there's a lot of talk about tying what's going on in other places, in like in Fulton County with the trust and other things, into some bigger investigations here. But
Yeah.
we will see. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, we were pleasantly surprised yesterday or the day before when the Department of Justice came in and sided with us on our case against the Trusted News Initiative. And I have to say, it was a very emotional moment for me when I get a court filing in an email that says the interests of the United States of America sides with our company. I found that really impactful and emotional, and it made me gave me some hope for the future. So I'm really thankful for that, and maybe I'll pull that up later in the show and show people what I'm talking about. But here is Pastor Dell. He is again Pastor Jake Dell at the Woodbury Congregational Church in Connecticut. I hope you enjoy this interview. It's about 15 minutes. Welcome back to the Skiff. I want to show you something. The Connecticut Sentinel, our editor Jackie Homan sent me this, and she said you got to have this guy on, Pastor Jake Dell of the Woodbury Congregational Church in Connecticut. Check out the article on the Connecticut Sentinel. That's ConnecticutSentinel.com, spelled with a C, the old revolutionary way. But he's with us today, and I'll bring him in now. Pastor, thanks for coming on this morning. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, Todd.
So I was really looking forward to talking to you because I'm a PK. You know, my dad was a Presbyterian minister for 42 years. I totally get where you're coming from, and I've seen a lot of this when I was up in Connecticut at some of the churches. But tell us the gist of your article, and then I want to go from there.
Well, the gist of the article is that I got tired of seeing these rainbow flags on churches up and down Main Street all across this country. I drove into West Hartford a couple of weeks ago, and there was a giant progress flag flying from the flagpole. And it occurred to me, this is just debauchery. This is licentiousness. There has to be some way to stop this. And sure enough, in the Connecticut Constitution, in the first article, Section 3, even though there's the guarantee of the free exercise of religion, there's a clause there that says provided churches are not engaged in licentious behavior. So that became the gist of my sermon last week, which the texts were from First Kings, where Elijah casts his mantle over Elisha and anoints him a prophet to take up the Jehovah's battle against idol worship. And then Jesus is basically doing the same thing with his disciples, sending them out with spiritual weapons. And I thought, the law really is a spiritual weapon that God gives us, that he's given us to wield. And our forefathers, Christian men who founded this Constitution state, wrote that into the law. I think they knew that religion could go sideways, and they wanted some restraint on it, even though they were very much pro free exercise and freedom of conscience and freedom of religion.
That is so refreshing to hear from a pastor. I have to say, it's shockingly refreshing. You know, I had been, when I was up in Connecticut, going to a church in Fairfield, a congregational church, and they were left-leaning, very kind people, but one of they were talking global warming and all that, and I could kind of go along with that and tolerate it. But then one morning they got up and started preaching transgender, and I just said, this is not Christianity. And I confronted the pastor, and he got angry and, I guess hurt in his mind, but that's not Christian. Mutilating children is not Christianity.
It's
right?
Absolutely not. It's actually Baalism, which is what Elijah was preaching against. I mean, we've gone full circle in our depravity here. And I think one of the things that really spurred me on to do this was just the Project Veritas video that came out last week that featured allegedly a pastor in Connecticut basically assisting a minor to obtain access to what's called a chest binder, which even the person on the video acknowledges is only for people over 18. And I thought, well, regardless of what you think about adults doing this, we're talking about something that is impacting minor children against the law. And when pastors are engaged in aiding and abetting law breaking, set aside whatever you think about this. That's just licentiousness. That's the very definition of disorder, and it's a threat to the orderly government and civil rule. And the Constitution, the highest law in the state, requires the Attorney General of the state to do something about it.
Connecticut is very special, but it's this cradle of liberty, and there's so many religious names on the towns here. Canaan,
Right.
Bethlehem, because the people who immigrated here were trying to start the New Jerusalem or whatever. And I didn't realize you mentioned Baal, and I think that is everywhere. You saw it in the Olympics in France with the calf on the wall that they were worshiping or whatever. But the word cannibal comes from Canaan and Baal. I didn't know this. I mean, it's eating your children. It's the same thing you're talking about. It's fascinating when you dig into the history.
That's right. The cult of Cybele was a cult where the priests would castrate themselves and burn their genitals to the goddess. I mean, nothing is new. Nothing is new under the sun.
So tell us about what you're going to do. What's your progress or your way forward, I guess, on all this?
Well, I preached the sermon. It was probably one of the most sort of intense sermons I've ever preached. It got a good response from the congregation, and I've sent letters now to Attorney General William Tong asking him to at least open an investigation into these churches. I'm told from the Connecticut Sentinel, which picked up this story, that they're aware of other churches that are engaged in the same kind of behavior. I sent a copy of that letter to Attorney General Tong, to Attorney General Pam Bondi, and also to the Religious Liberty Commission, whose opening hearing I attended last month in Washington, D.C. The free exercise of religion, as I said, does not give one the free exercise to sin. And what we have now is we have counterfeit faith, counterfeit religion, operating under the protection of the First Amendment with all the privileges that gives them, but it's diluting the stock. It's diluting the currency, if you will. Those of us who are preaching the true faith are being lumped in with these people who are fake, really preaching a fake version of Christianity, and now I think have crossed the line into just law breaking.
So the Congregational Church, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe back in the founding of the nation that there was kind of an agreement between the Presbyterians and the Congregationalists. Presbyterians went south, Congregationalists were more up in the New England area. But you see a lot of rainbow flags on the Congregational churches. Black Lives Matter. I mean, what is that?
Well, I think that's typical of mainline Protestantism in this country, throughout, across the board, whether it's the Episcopal Church, the Presbyterian Church, the United Church of Christ, Unitarians. That's what you see. And I think, that goes way back. It has its roots, I think, in the fundamentalist-modernist controversy in the 1920s, when J. Gresham Machen left the Presbyterian Church. And then fast forward through the 1960s, I think you see deliberate subversion of mainline Protestant pulpits through the seminaries. The kind of men and then later women they were turning out really did not believe in a supernatural view of the world. They did not believe in an inspired, authoritative biblical text. They were soft on things like the resurrection, and then that that opened the door even as early as the early 1970s to an embrace of homosexuality and alternative lifestyles and sexualities that took root in these churches. It took a generation or more for them to triumph, and here we are living with that moment right now.
So how do we, you're right, all the denominations, a lot of people are leaving I'm a Presbyterian, leaving PCUSA, going to the more orthodox versions.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
But it's a shame to abandon these church organizations. Can it be saved?
I think it can be saved. I think that these are tactics like what I'm exploring here with the Constitutional Avenue. Getting the state to take a look at these so-called churches may get them to actually reform themselves, or at least stop their most egregious things they're doing wrong. The other thing I'm looking at is donor intent. You have hundreds, in the case of these old churches, you've got hundreds of years of bequests and wills and money that's been given over the years, endowments that are worth millions, land that was purchased and given for the purposes of maintaining a Christian church. You know, there's an example I like to use in Bridgeport, where the First Congregational Church of Bridgeport was sold to become a mosque. Now, I realize that churches go defunct and people move away, neighborhoods change, and you may not necessarily be able to support all these old historic churches, but I can guarantee you that the people who gave the money to build that church in the last century did not intend for it to be a mosque. And so, you know, I think that there's probably a whole class of beneficiaries out there, heirs, who would be able to make a claim against these churches whenever they're up for sale, whenever there's a transaction, just based on the grounds that this is not what my ancestors intended. They did not intend to see a rainbow flag. They did not intend to see something other than Christianity preached from here. And so if there's going to be these kinds of transactions, then I think a class exists that can claw back some of that money. And what I would like to do is see some of that money that's clawed back, A, go to the heirs, but B, go into a trust that can raise up godly men, train them in a biblical seminary, and then put them back into these historic pulpits and fund them and give them the money that they can actually, you know, make a living preaching the gospel.
Wow, we want to help you with that, because, you know, my family got off the boat. They're buried in Middleton. They ended up, you know, going all over the country. But I'm one of those ancestors. So I want to help you.
You're one of you're one of the heirs potentially. Yeah.
So attendance, you mentioned, I think Jackie mentioned, or you did in the article, has increased in churches that actually do preach the Bible, and they are declining in places that don't. Are you seeing that in your experience?
You'll always find the exception that proves the rule. So I'm sure there's some liberal megachurch out there that's preaching the rainbow dogma, and they're packed to the gills. But for the most part, yeah, these mainline churches that have gone liberal and gone woke are dying. And some of the projections that I've seen is that they're in the Episcopal Church, that the last Episcopalian's already been born, right? That there won't be any. There won't be any by 2050. Now, what I've seen in my own church since I came here in November of 2024, we're a historic church. We're 355 years old, literally the first church in this area. And it was a dwindled remnant congregation that was about thinking seriously of closing the church, but they said, let's try one more time. We connected through various networks that I was part of. And I came and took took the call, and we've doubled the size of the congregation in just 6 months, which is very exciting to see the Lord bless a very clear, bold preaching of the gospel, right? And I mean, I would say that's the other thing that has to happen here too. We can't just preach, part A of the gospel, which is you're a sinner and you need Jesus to be saved. There's part B. Once you've been saved, you now need to go out and make disciples of all nations, teaching them to do do all that I've commanded you, right? And that command part is where the law really gets applied. There's a threefold ministry that the church is called to in its imitation of Christ: prophet, priest, and king. And the king part is where Christians are really called to engage in politics and engage in the political realm.
Well, Christianity is the only religion you can hate, right?
Well, that's true, and that's probably a tell, isn't it? That it's got something true.
Exactly. What do you think you're going to get from the Connecticut government? I mean, they're part of all this, right?
Well, I'm not holding my breath waiting for a response. Yeah. That's why I went to Bondi. That's why I've reached out to the Religious Liberty Commission. I'm trying to build those networks. I'm trying to build a coalition with prayer groups and other churches in Connecticut, other pastors who are waking up, Republican town committees, Republican candidates. I'm not. This is not a partisan effort, but there is one party that's more friendly than the other, and that's just the way the reality of things are.
Sure.
Things are. And so I'm trying to change the landscape here in Connecticut, because I don't expect the politicians to lead. They're not going to stick their necks out. They've got to follow the votes, but the preachers we can stick our necks out. We can prepare the landscape. We can change the landscape. Kind of like, when you're preparing a battlefield, you go in you drop the leaflets first. You go in with the propaganda, and you try to soften up the population so that they're ready for the offensive when it comes. And I think us preachers historically in Connecticut, we preached the American Revolution. That's exactly what we did. We prepared the people for independence. And we're talking today on the eve of our 249th anniversary of our independence. So I'd like to see preachers in Connecticut do it again. I'd like to see preachers throughout New England do it again.
Wow. So we want to help with that effort.
Well, thank you.
Maybe you should think about writing like a column every now and then for the Connecticut.
Yeah, we'd love to. Thank you.
So that could be something right there, because we're totally open to that in all religions, actually. But What about money being given to the pastors? There's been some reports out recently that some churches have been taking Bitcoin and other things from certain NGOs or whatever to talk about certain things or influence populations. Have you seen any of that in your experience in
Well, I
Connecticut?
haven't seen that directly in terms of individual pastors being paid, but certainly when Doge first got going, we saw the data dumps from USAID, and a lot of those were going to refugee resettlement programs that were operated by Catholic Charities, Lutheran Charities, Episcopal Migration Ministry. So I don't have the long list, the exhaustive list, and you have to check the actual detail. But what I recall is that most of the mainline denominations were getting money from the government for things like refugee resettlement, and just like advertising buys influence, I think we've got to assume that maybe there's not a quid pro quo that can be proved, but money talks.
Totally, and I think it's behind a lot of the transgender stuff too being preached. Pastor, thank you. Where can people follow you?
Well, I'm at Experimental Sermons on Substack, and then my X handle is at Jake Dell 73, and then I'm at the First Congregational Church of Woodbury. So just Google that, Woodbury, Connecticut. You'll find our webpage, and you'll find links to everything there.
Fantastic. We'll have you back. Have a great day.
Great, thank you.
Keep up the good work. Take care. What do you think, Bill?
Very, very good interview. What struck me was that he addresses the issues directly. Doesn't shy away from here's what the real underlying stuff is. The one thing that he brought up that we didn't talk about, or I didn't hear him speak of, there are concerns around some of these NGOs, even the deep, both Christian and Jewish ones and others that have been getting USAID money. We'll probably cover that in another episode, but but there are concerns there that go beyond just, are they helping, the wrong kind of stuff? I mean, some of it is very dark, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we, we had one ad. Why don't we just run, I'm going to run a quick ad and then we'll move to the next segment. Stay
Great.
with us, guys.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
All right, Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Let's welcome in Brian K. Pritchard. Mr. Pritchard, thank you for making time this afternoon. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Great to be here. Always a pleasure to be with you guys.
So this week continued the drama and the unfolding of the problems that have stemmed from the company known as First Liberty Building and Loan and their owners, Brant Frost and the Frost family, Brant Frost IV and the Frost family. And so that is beginning to have, I'll call it tentacles that reach out across Georgia, and both, unfortunately, toward the folks that I'll call them victims of this, what the SEC is now calling a Ponzi scheme. And, the many politicians, it appears, across Georgia and actually across the country that have gotten money and in some cases may have given money to the Frost family or their ancillary organizations like the GRA PAC and other things. So it is interesting, and we wanted to have you on. I know you've been looking at this every day. So let me start there. I'm going to open the door for you. What do you think are the most important things for folks to be watching right now with all the stuff that's coming out about this?
Well, the way the media is covering it, they're staying away from the Georgia GOP Inc. They're staying away with the involvement. They do write the story saying a prominent Republican family, a prominent Republican, donors, but they're not tying. They are focusing on the 140 million Ponzi scheme, but they're not tying the amount of political influence in the state of Georgia that this money was purchasing. And I want to put something together for your audience here, but let's remember, if you don't know these people, we're going to refer to them as the Frost family, and I'm going to explain why. Every single dime that they spent to influence a politician, whether it be nationally or right here in the state of Georgia, or a political election being the Georgia GOP Inc. state officer elections here in June, was somebody else's money, a retiree. I tell you what's most troubling here to absorb, Bill, is reading the stories of retirees that trusted them, gave all of their money, and these people turned around and used this money for multiple things, but to purchase political influence. So let me say this before we really get into this. For those out there, and you're going to hear a lot of reporting, I did a 3-hour segment, a full 3 hours on this subject Friday. Bill, Todd, the Georgia Record, they're doing work on this, and we're working together on many of these aspects. But you're going to hear throughout all the reporting we do, First Liberty Building and Loan. And that's what you will hear. First Liberty Building and Loan. They're the business, the front that was used in this Ponzi scheme. You're going to hear Brant Frost the fourth, and then Brant Frost the fifth. Okay, so just to lay it out there, Brant Frost the fourth. This is the family. Thank you very much, Bill. Brant Frost the fourth, the dad on the far end. He is the father. There you go. On the left there, he is the father, the fourth. He is the head guy down at First Liberty, Building and Loan. Then you see Brant Frost the fifth, the young man there, that he was the front face. He's also in First Liberty. He's a part of the business, but he is the front man on, it gets a little confusing, on the GRA PAC, and he led the way in most of the political influencing for the family. You hear us talk a lot about the Frost family, and the reason being is I've had people say this to me, and I don't know about to you, Bill. Well, that's not fair, to involve the children. We're not doing that. We're not doing that here. The Frost family, politically, they've used all these children. Okay, I'm going to step out. I think if you look at this very close and you go deep, we're going to get into the Ponzi scheme. This is kind of a very sad situation because these children, including Brant Frost the fifth, which I do not like. I don't like him. I don't like anything about him. But the entire family, it's a cult. Mom, right here, Krista Frost. We'll get into this. This is really deep. Krista Frost, the mother there, and the father groomed these children in what I would consider a cult. They raised these children to be part of this scam that they've been running. So another thing you'll hear is the GRA. Now, the GRA, Bill, I think you might agree. I've gotten some pushback on it, but the GRA came out and they made a statement about the Ponzi scheme where Brant Frost, the entire family, had a major role in the GRA. You will hear about the GRA PAC. There's two separate things. The GRA Political Action Committee was operated by Brant Frost, and the address went right to First Liberty's building. Now, why does all this come together? Is because $140 million in a Ponzi scheme where they played on people Christianity. They said we're pastors. Their compliance officer, Jamie Sickert, came from Cornerstone Ministries Investment, who a couple years ago, I mean, in 2008, was part of Cornerstone Ministries Investment, their compliance officer that filed bankruptcy for like $150 million.
Yeah. Let me draw a parallel if I can. Oh, go ahead, Todd, if you want.
I was, I don't have any proof of this, but I want to ask the question. In Arizona, there was evidence presented to the legislature of cartel influence buying mortgages for people. I just listened to the interview in Tucker in Maine about the CCP controlling the state with grow houses, hundreds of them all over, organized crime controlling the government. You have Kemp going to Davos. You have Georgia Chai Chemical being funded or protected by the Georgia legislature. My question is, do you have any thoughts or evidence about any associations with other entities that was using the Frost for these purposes? That's my question.
Not at this time. I don't at this time, because this is very fluid, and it's going to this is going to be for a long time. A very long time. And one of the points of opening up with this is these people, $140 million Ponzi scheme. It's been found that they've used over $500,000 of that money, and I would say more than that, in giving out money to politicians. Now, another thing I want to say is, folks out there, as you're hearing me continue to report this, I want to make it very clear. There's probably a lot of people that were shocked. There's two things here, because you're going to hear Colton Moore. All right. Colton Moore received a lot of money from campaign contributions from this family. Most people in America now know State Senator Colton Moore. Could he have been shocked 2 weeks ago? Like, I didn't know you were doing that. That's possible. And I really want to be clear on that. You're going to hear a lot of names in the next couple of weeks that received money and are totally shocked. I'm going to give you another one. A lady by the name of Jackie Harling. Jackie Harling up in, I think is it Walker County or wherever she's at? She ran for a state legislator, state House rep seat a couple years ago. And they gave her money, all right? And she's carried their water as far as the Frost family and stuff like that. The other day when this came out, or the first of, at the end a couple weeks ago, could she be just totally shocked? I didn't realize you were doing that. That's possible. But there's the other side of this, who was in on it. So I want to say this right now. I suspect there's an enormous amount of people that you might think, wow, I can't believe you worked with these people, that are totally shocked. And then there's a group that you got to say, wait a minute, were you guys in on it?
Yeah.
And there's a lot surrounding that.
That's what we need to dig into for sure.
Let me go back to the family for just a minute, because something happened this week that I want to make sure people understand. Again, here's the family members. Right-hand side is Brant Frost IV, the senior. On left-hand side is Brant Frost V, the junior. Next to Brant Frost, the senior, is his wife, Krista Frost. And then also in the row of ladies is Katie Frost. And one of the things that happened this week was Brant Frost IV issued a statement that appeared, at least to me, in my opinion, to be taking full responsibility for everything on himself and excluding responsibility, or attempting to exclude responsibility from the rest of the family. That is not borne out, in my mind, based on what folks have actually done in their involvement. and their involvement's been pretty direct and visible. So one way is, as you said just a few minutes ago, Brian, that Brant Frost has been the face man, if you will, of First Liberty Building and Loan. Many people have dealt directly with him. I believe folks have reported if they went into the office or knew folks that had gone into the office, Brant would often be the one sitting in that office, greeting people or doing business or whatnot. In addition, well, hang on a second. Let me go where I wanted to go. In addition, he's been the one who's been talking often about the sort of, the foundation of the family being, a very Christian family. They're looking to help people build their own wealth and so forth. And as such, put out this kind of statement: First Liberty wants to help you build your kingdom to the glory of God and the prosperity of your posterity. This kind of goes back to what Pastor Dell said a few minutes ago. Sometimes religion can be used in inappropriate ways to support inappropriate or, in fact, dark things. And I believe that this is one of those examples. Now, the other thing that we need to keep in mind is Katie Frost had also been very active in a number of things. She was named Director of Community Impact, is my understanding, and as such was responsible for 5 figures of investment going to various communities. Direct involvement. And so just because Brant Frost IV comes out and says, oh, well, I was responsible and I want to apologize and so forth, that's great. That's fine. But that does not absolve the other folks that were directly involved. They were involved. You can see it. You can measure it. And in my belief, they need to be held accountable for what they did and didn't do. You will also find that Katie Frost and Brant Frost V were involved deeply in things going on with the Republican Party. Here's a group of folks from the recent convention, and there in the upper left-hand corner, who is it? It's Brant Frost V. And many of the videos that you'll see of the event, you'll see Brant Frost or Katie Frost or both moving around the floor and involved in various things, some of them not so friendly, like blocking mics and so forth. So I wanted to make sure we said that, because it would be wrong to have the public think, oh, well, this was really just one person. Does not appear to be borne out by the facts. Sorry, back to you guys.
That's why I opened up that when you hear First Liberty Building and Loan, you got to understand it's the Frost family. It really is. It's the entire family. And if you're out there internationally, because I know CDM has an international audience, the entire family has a role. The mother, Krista, we've done the story. The mother, Krista, her job, as we've had other people that know the family very well tell us, that her job was the director. She directed the children as they were growing up, what they were supposed to do politically, the hook that they used. So let me just go. There's no such thing as a coincidence. Let's just go over a little bit of June. All right. Because I want to get into the Georgia GOP state convention cycle. Folks, let's be clear. This has nothing to do with whether David Cross won or lost an election as chairman. Nothing to do with it. I've told David that myself. You have to remember, you gotta look at all the players on the whiteboard in what I would call a crime. Okay, not just First Liberty, the crime of corruption and manipulation and stealing a complete cycle and party away from the people. And yes, the Frost had that much power to do it. We have right now Brant Frost, the company, we know for a fact they solicited all the state delegates. So Brant Frost sent out communications soliciting all the state delegates. We know for a fact that they solicited to the fund, they solicited every state committee member. Now, we don't know how many of the state committee members have invested in their fund. We know for a fact they've solicited, every executive committee member, that they solicited them. And we're told by multiple sources, and no one has denied this. I've offered the denial. I've offered on my program to come on and let them deny that they have investment. Multiple people have come forward to let me know that 3, maybe more, current executive committee members of the Georgia GOP have investments in First Liberty Building and Loan. And I have been told this. I've been told this, and this is not a liability thing, because multiple people, and I've offered them the chance to tell me no. So I have been told that it's very strong possibility that the former chairman, David Schaefer, was invested at the time they locked the doors, and first vice chair, current Sally Grubbs. This is what I've been told. I'll say that publicly. Now, I say if. I leave the question mark. They have every opportunity. So, folks, you got to think about the level of corruption. Katie Frost. Katie Frost will start here, chair of the nominating committee. Now, how do you become chair of the nominating committee? Josh McCoon makes you chair of the nominating committee, right? Katie Frost, chair of the nominating committee, was going to deny Lisa Pierce and Kylie Kramer an opportunity to be candidates. Now, forget, before a clicker is ever handed out at this convention, everything about the process was rigged, set up to be stolen. Now, it comes back to, I think it really does, if you start laying all this out on the board, it comes back to a panic of the entire Frost family. I think the entire Frost family was in a panic mode that they knew they were collapsing the whole entire time. They've already collapsed. All right. And if they lost control of the Georgia GOP, they could lose the opportunity to get more investors, maybe to get out of this thing or keep paying off the Ponzi scheme.
And all the work that they'd done for years to build political influence would be poof.
Now, Katie Frost attempted to keep Lisa Pierce off the ballot. Okay. It's got question marks. Keep Lisa Pierce off the ballot to run for first vice chair to protect, in my opinion, Sally Grubbs, the candidate for first vice chair, that may be an investor in their fund. Wow. I mean, wait a minute, folks.
How many different connections are there,
We don't have the time. They go on and on and on. All right. Josh McCoon is connected through years. Mike Crane stood on a stage. Mike Crane, former state senator, right? Former state senator, colleague of Josh McCoon, former state senator, who Mike Crane is who they installed as first vice chair. We won't go down that road. Who is close friends and has gotten enormous amounts of money from the Frost family that came from the Ponzi scheme, was the chair of the convention. This is not just about that. It goes to the level of control all around the state that they tried to put in place for several years. I mean, this is like I have called for it. I said it in the AJC. I've called for it over and over. I mean, who is Best Guest Media? Best Guest Media gets $5,000 from the Georgia GOP. Who is Best Guest Media? Is that for Katie Frost to go on? Listen to sometime today, the Georgia GOP will be having an executive committee meeting. And I'm for sure this is going to leak out somewhere what happened. But they're going to be having a meeting today. As we speak, there was some information went around Saturday, and I don't want to knock the individual that put it out, but it's not correct. Brant Frost did not resign from Coweta County Republican Party. These people at this point have not resigned from any position they hold at the Georgia Republican Party. Brant Frost, the first vice chair, I think is the guy's name is, at Coweta County Saturday morning, said Brant Frost the fourth or the fifth had stepped back. He had stepped back. And in his absence, this guy would assume the role of chair.
Acting chair, I believe is what he said.
Because Brant was going through a current situation, didn't even call it an investigation. Well, for anybody out there that thinks that Brant Frost resigned from Coweta County, where was Krista? Krista is what? Is she the second vice chair? She's the second vice chair of the party. She didn't resign, the mom. So, yeah. I mean, Katie Frost is yet to resign from chair of the.
It really is amazing that's just straight up arrogance and it's like it's the same thing you see in Arizona in what's the county Maricopa, where they just refuse to leave. It's like this. You have to pull them by their fingernails out of those positions no matter what.
Well, if you look again, if we kind of go back to the money flow, you begin to get a sense of perhaps some of the connections that allow this kind of, I'll call it avarice, arrogance to exist. In the last few days, going to your point, Brian, Krista Frost was discovered to have made a contribution to Candace Taylor's campaign. And the day she did it was June 10th. Amazing. June 10th is the day of the Georgia GOP convention itself.
No, the convention I think was the 7th.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, but this would have been immediately after.
No,
you're right.
The point is not lost. The point is not lost. Where did Krista Frost get the money from? The family cookie jar in the kitchen?
And it wasn't small. It was $3,500.
It's a lot of quarters.
Yeah, it was $3,500.
Yeah, and at the same time, and let me just do this. At the same time, keep in mind every single thing, and we're going to use the Georgia GOP Inc. Every single thing the Frost are doing with this money, First Liberty has collapsed. So when Krista Frost, this is one of many examples, when Krista Frost has the nerve to take $3,500 and send it down to Candace Taylor for what? What was it? Some kind of quid pro quo? I mean, they both served on the nominating committee. I mean, in the Georgia GOP convention. So when they do that, I want to give you this. If you guys get a chance, folks out there, there's a lady that is writing a great article. I'm not going to mention her name. She may not want to be on the show or mention, but she's writing some First Liberty's Ponzi scheme, the perspective. I'll get that once, of a victim. Now, this lady changes the name in this article to protect the individual, but she had a long talk with a guy, and she calls him George. George invested $1,019,000 with First Liberty after being drawn in by a promise of a 13% rate, okay? And they were drawn in by the compliance director there, Jamie Sickert. Now, it goes on to talk about that the guy wanted to make sure his wife had enough money to retire if something happened to him. And the guy's a pastor, and the other guy at First Liberty says, I'm a pastor. I mean, this is all just the way this went down. But the point I'm getting at is when this guy is getting a phone call saying you've lost over $1 million and you and your wife lost all of your savings, Krista Frost is getting in the cookie jar and taking this guy's money and sending it to Candace Taylor.
So the question is Candace giving it back?
Okay, you just hit on something there, Todd, that is kindly, I don't know what's happening here. If everybody's contacted their attorney and said, hey, what do we have to do? And they're waiting for an answer. And
Well,
I'll
you don't
tell
have
you
to wait
what.
for any freaking answer. You just give the money back, right?
No, what I'm getting at, but what I'm getting at is I have someone said to me, who do you give it back to right now? All right.
Give it back to the receiver, I think, but
well, no, you're right, but but what is getting me right now today is I can give you a list of politicians that should be coming out in Georgia, forget nationally, and saying, you know what, when the Frost family contributed to my campaign, I was not aware of anything, and my heart and prayers go out to the people that had lost everything, and it's despicable. And as soon as I find out where the money has to go back to, my campaign will refund it. I mean, I would have thought by now that there would be an enormous number of these statements going out, and they're not. I haven't seen the first one from anyone.
Yeah, and we're not talking about a few contributions. One of the things that is published in one of the articles that's been written here is a link to the FEC database. And just using the name Brant Frost, we'll publish this in the Georgia Record tomorrow. You can look up 358 individual contributions to politicians running in Georgia, but also in some cases running elsewhere in the country. And it's fascinating to see the names. Even including, folks like apparently the campaign for Mr. McCormick appears to have received some money from the Frosts. Many of the U.S. congressional candidates look like they got money from the Frosts at one point or another. So the question becomes, as you said, Brian, what's going to be done with that money? And two, what was any other involvement between the Frost family, First Liberty Building and Loan, and these various candidates? You mentioned Mike Crane's name earlier in the broadcast. He appears at the very top of the list of ranked contributions. Looks like tens of thousands were given to Crane over some period of time. Go ahead.
No, and that's why I said at the beginning when we went in there, I want to be careful because, folks, I'm not passing judgment on a lot of these people. Could be very shocked. They, you go through life and you're like, wow, that's caught me off guard. I never knew that. That's very possible here, is that the Frost family painted a picture to a lot of people that were not aware of this and are caught off guard. But that doesn't mean they don't have to answer and they don't have to make a statement. And, you brought up Rich McCormick. What is that called? The Kevin Bacon, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? Rich McCormick, Philip Singleton, Julie Singleton, Philip Singleton, Rich McCormick's chief of staff, Julie Singleton, Rich McCormick's communication director, Philip Singleton, the person that started the Freedom Caucus in Georgia, Philip Singleton, the guy that hired who? Katie Frost. Katie Frost was the very first executive director of the Freedom Caucus. You can't make any of this up. Okay? She's the first. Now, this is not an attack. I want to be clear on the Freedom Caucus. I'm giving myself personally the Freedom Caucus. I've worked with Charlize Byrd. I've worked with a lot of these people. They've done a lot of great work. They have fought the battles, but the facts are just that. Greg Dolezal, state senator, he's not refuted it. I've offered him to come on the program. I know a lot of people that have sent him messages that maybe Greg Dolezal, a member of the Freedom Caucus, invested $2 million. And he's yet to come out and say he didn't. And the Freedom Caucus members, the GRA PAC, Brant Frost V, he sent a lot of them money in their campaigns. So this is not an attack on them, but Krista Frost, the Frost family, tied in. And this is where I'm waiting on some of these people to come out and say, look, we condemn what they did. I mean, just come out and condemn it.
Yeah, you and I have speculated for just 1 second, Todd.
Yeah.
You and I have speculated for a couple of years that with the pressure on the GOP and the GOP Inc. and all this junk that's been going on, eventually, somebody might crack and become a whistleblower. And isn't it interesting now with federal pressure on this? Many are wondering, is this the time? And will somebody that actually knows the answers to these questions say, hey, I gotta bolt for the good side because I can't substantiate myself and my role and the impact on my family of being involved in something not as great as I would like it to be. And so I think many are hoping that in the middle of this, some whistleblower will stand up and start talking about, what they know.
Let me ask you, Brian, what are you hearing on the ground with the guy on the street in really in light of the Georgia GOP being so corrupt and the convention being so corrupt? Is there any movement to, like, people are saying we need something different?
No. No, I mean, I've been calling it the 30%. And I mean, like I said, we're not getting into, did the election go 70-30, but let's just say it was a 30%. Okay. I sent a politician that's running for office, a statewide office, the other day, and I said, you guys better pay attention to the 30%. And the 30% is not happy. And when I say that, I say it just angry. They're angry. And as I said earlier, and as you well know in disclosure, David's a friend of mine, and I supported David Cross. I supported David Cross for chairman, but I've told David right now, this is not whether he won or lost the election, and the clickers, which, we could go on another segment. This is about the fact that everything about the Georgia GOP in the last 7 years is very phony, fake,
exactly.
Corrupt. That's never been going.
That's my point. Are people looking for something different? Maybe you say no, huh?
Well, no, I don't know if they're looking for something different. I think they're waiting to see what happens. I mean, I think people would like to have their party back. I don't think I will
the
say
real party.
Ask me that question. What do I want? I want the Georgia GOP, structured the proper way, paperwork filed the proper way, to operate the proper way, to be in place. I am a Republican, so I'm not looking for something else. I'll tell you what I'm looking for. I think.
Well, that's what I meant. Something different than what they have now.
Oh yeah, I think Josh McCoon should resign today. I think Lori McClain is the treasurer. I mean, Lori McClain. This is what I understand. The state committee. Listen to this, Todd. Your audience, listen to this. The Georgia State Committee, GOP committee, they have a meeting the day before the convention, or 2 days, right? June 5th, right? And you got 150 people in the room, and Josh McCoon gets up because of all of the, financial things surrounding him, his personal use of the credit card, FEC filings that are just, atrocious. That's another show in itself. And he stands up, and you have Lori McClain, the treasurer of the Georgia GOP, sitting there, unbeknownst to her, and announces Katie Frost is going to be the chair of the Georgia GOP Financial Oversight Committee.
Yeah, you can't make that up.
You can't. Yeah. Now, you got to think about this. I keep saying this. You got to think about when he does that, First Liberty is already gone. It's already finished, and they're doing this. Now, Lori McClain, I said this on the show the other day. I've not changed my position. I think the world of her. I really do. I think she's a great person. I know better than anyone out there today what she's up against trying to work with Josh McCoon. But that being said, at the corporate at the corporate filing for the Secretary of State has 3 names: Josh McCoon, the Secretary, and Lori McClain's. And if my name was filed at the Secretary of State right now as treasurer, I'd go in there and turn the tables over and start going through everything.
Forgery. It's forgery, right?
Because here's the thing: the Frost family, ill-gotten gains has been funneled through by donation after donation after donation to the Georgia GOP. Now, I know we got to go, but I want to give you something else. You know, when you run for office, there's in a state office for the party, there's no financial disclosure. You know, that like you could spend $80,000 running for office. You don't have to disclose any money, where it came from, how you got it. When you run for state party office, there's no disclosure. So I'm going to ask the question right now: how much of the Frost money went into Josh McCoon's campaign for chairman of the Georgia GOP, Inc., that will never be disclosed? I think they should go in and look at his finances to see how much of the Frost money is in his bank account. That's my opinion.
Well, you would expect that with both SEC and the FBI involved in the investigation, they'll be looking at all the folks that are close to this. And I have reason to suspect that they're probably looking at, you know, the Josh McCoons of the world, because they do appear to be tied very closely, both in operations and in the GOP and perhaps in these other things. We don't know, but sure.
Well, I can tell you one. I can tell you one person they're not going to be looking at. That's me. Yeah, don't you remember back in the old days?
Yeah, when you were the nefarious bad guy?
I was the bad guy. When I was, and I'll tell you the one thing. I'll tell you what they did accomplish. They did accomplish keeping me away from the checkbook. They were so much. I mean, you can't. You know, you got to laugh, but you remember the fear of keeping me away from everything.
Yeah.
Things have a way of working out for the best, huh? BKP.
Well, obviously, lots more to come on First Liberty. Lots more to come on the individuals involved here, and I know you too, Brian, are going to continue to report and press on this. I would suggest to those that up to this point have been silent and yet play a critical role, especially in the GOP. You know, the longer the silence continues, the worse it looks. So,
well, Bill, we want to win in 2026.
That's the whole
win.
point. Yeah,
we want to win. So they need to flush all this out right now. And for anyone out there that's reading the dad's statement, the apology statement, let me just be clear. That's an attorney written statement. We're cooperating. Okay. So if you're out there and you're putting on social media, well, they're taking responsibility. That's an attorney statement saying, you know, you're in really deep. We might want to say, we're going to work with everybody.
Yeah. And it says, and specifically it says, it's coming from Brand Frost for he excludes others who clearly had a role in this stuff. So
BKP, where can people hear your show?
Monday through Friday at 8 to 10 a.m. We look at national and international affairs at 10 a.m. every Monday through Friday. We put 1 hour dedicated to Georgia. We call it the Georgia Hour, and that is voiceofruralamerica.com, voiceofruralamerica.com. You can look me up on Twitter, voice@am. Send me a message, and but Monday through Friday.
Cool. Bill,
That's
what
great.
else you got?
That's it for today. Like I said, there's got to be more coming. We know it, and we'll be here with our catcher mitt to grab it and get it out to folks. Brian, again, thank you so much for making time to be with us this afternoon. Always a pleasure to have you.
And by the way, just let me say, people can find BKP on the front page of the Georgia Record too, georgiarecord.com.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. We'll see you everybody next time. Next time for the Georgia show will be Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Thanks very much.